it wasn't until really the late 1980s that things began to shift back, I suppose, away from AIDS, back onto LGBT activism. And the real focus of that, or the real spark, was Section 28, which, among other things, also brought gay and bisexual men together with lesbian and bisexual women, plus trans people and intersex people. Previously, there had been quite a division between the male and female parts of the movement, but Section 28 was an attack upon all of us, so it brought women to the forefront. And in fact, in the Section 28 campaign, many women were very, very prominent and played a very important role. And so that gave us a collectivity and a strength.
I was part of a group called Dykes and Faggots Together, which was a very early kind of, we don't want to be separated. And we performed really silly stunts, of which the best was we got hold of some notepaper from the Department of Employment, as it was called then, the government department, and a bill was going through Parliament to create some new regulations around employment for disabled people, because in those days there were certain types of employment that were reserved for disabled people. And at the same time, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was an idiot, had said that he felt very sorry for gay people and that we should be considered disabled, not wicked. Thank you very much. So we got hold of this notepaper and we wrote a fake letter on it, supposedly from a civil servant at the Department of Employment, inquiring of the major unions and the top 50 employers, which we got a nice little list from the Times of, inquiring whether they would agree to reserved occupations for lesbians and gay men, quoting the Archbishop of Canterbury, and suggesting, it was so obviously a piss take, because I think we suggested kennel maids for lesbians and ballet dancers for gay men, or, it was obviously, to me, a piss take. But it caused havoc and it melted down the Department of Employment switchboard on the morning it hit. Actually made the national press. It was so funny. We all wore badges declaring that we were gay. We were out and proud, although I think most of us were a bit more careful about where we held hands, because you had to get up close to see what a badge said. But yeah, we were out, we were pushy about it, but there was a small number of us. We had a small number of clubs and pubs, and we travelled round London to attend them on the right nights. We hung out with each other. We had huge rows about what I would consider sort of gay theology, what was the right way to behave about this, that or the other. But we were very tight-knit, and the trouble was we were a bubble. And over the course of the 80s, we started to get more visible. We started to actually link up to human rights issues. We started to make clear demands about simple equality. And what that got us was a huge hate campaign from the right and from the mainstream press. In fact, in those days, there was only the mainstream press. There wasn't anything else. And that culminated in Section 28, because we became a social scapegoat. Lesbians and gay men became a massive social scapegoat.
In 1988, the London Pride Parade jumped from 15,000 people the previous year to 30,000 people, doubling overnight. So it showed that really this was a real grassroots groundswell opinion, which brought in lots of people who'd never ever been previously involved in LGBT plus activism. And of course it wasn't just London, it was all across the country. There were huge marches in Manchester, in Newcastle, you name it. It was very, very, very impressive.
Demonstrations in the 80s were a hoot. And in fact, Pride then was still somewhat of a riot. And, nowadays the police won't even arrest people who are trying to disrupt Pride marches, but in those days you could get arrested at the drop of a hat.
I think the attacks upon our community gave those marches in the 1980s an energy that had previously been lacking. I mean, people went on them, but the passion and enthusiasm and determination of people who marched in the 1980s was exponentially higher. People really felt that our community was under attack, and if we didn't do something, we would be crushed.
I mean, it was small enough that we would go to the University of London Union in Mallet Street and we would take it over for the day. And this had happened about halfway down the march, so people ran forward to Ulu and lots of people came out onto the street and were demonstrating about this, and the police panicked and tried to kettle us. It was a really early example of kettling, which was fatal because there were 2 exits from Ulu, and every time they kettled us back into one part of the street, people were literally walking into Ulu, coming out round the back, and I can remember running through Ulu and taunting the police from the back. And we were chanting Stonewall, 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 which is probably where, I remembered that in thinking about things later on. But it was, we were, Stonewall was the call to a riot. And, the police arrested quite a few people. They let most of them go, but there were quite a lot of people in the cells later on, and we all had to go down and stand outside and wait for them to come out. And the Queens were glorious when they let them out. And my friend Julian, they let him out. They said, did you ask for a lawyer? And he said, no, but I told them I could do with a hairdresser.